Buonasera. Good evening, everybody. My name is Paolo Barlera. I'm the interim director of the Institute. It is my pleasure to welcome you tonight to the Italian Cultural Institute. Tonight's event is part of a series centered around the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, in Italian Giorno della Memoria. It's a series coordinated by the Primo Levi Center, and I want to thank here Natalia Endrimi and Alessandro Cassin. Alessandro, sorry, I have reading glasses, I can't see very well. And it's in collaboration with the Consulate General of Italy, the Italian Cultural Institute, and Casa Italiana at NYU. It's been 20 years since the year 2000 that the Italian government has established January 27 on the anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz concentration camp as the day of commemoration of all the victims of the Shoah. And we do this here at the Institute in New York and many other institutes around the world. We do it every year with commitment and dedication, also because after so many years, it seems important not only to simply remember, but also to bear witness to what happened 75 years ago. And I would like to invite now Natalia here for a brief introduction of the reading. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paolo, and thanks to the Italian Cultural Institute and to all of you for being here. I will start from the end. So my end is this. What we have done What we have done in 20 years is the result of a lot of study, of the collaboration of many historians who, like Carlo Spartaco Capogreco, Susan Zuccotti, have supported us with their knowledge and their research and have guided us. The result of reflecting of what Primo Levi warned us about, of the concerns that he spelled out so well about how man treats another man, and how we treat the environment, and how men and power interact in society. And also the result of the guidance of someone on our board, Stella Levi, who has survived Auschwitz and with great lucidity has always showed us what was important, what was rhetorical, what was needed, what was real in her experience at that time of a person, a very young woman who was arrested and deported with her entire community, and who was fundamentally considered dispensable. And she has always looked at all of those, the part of society that today are dispensable, and I really want to take the opportunity to thank her for this. Another important announcement for tonight, I'd like to thank Doris Schechter, who was a child who was interned in a detention location in Italy, in Guardia Grele, and fled with her family. Her father was a very brave man. He took the little child and fled to reach the Allied line and saved his family in extremely difficult conditions, and yet transmitted to her such a love for life and confidence on what can be done, and is really exemplary. So thanks, Doris, for being here. Also, Maria Eisenstein, the woman whose diary we present tonight, was briefly interned in the same location, Guardia Grele, as Doris. I will say a few words about our guests, Carlo Spartaco Capogreco, who is a major historian of the Italian concentration system. Before the beginning of his research in the early 1980s, nothing was known, literally, of the Italian concentration camps. There were, what happened? No? Okay. There were about 50 camps established for Jews in 1940, many more internment location camps established in colonial settings and for political dissenters, of which the Italians simply didn't speak. They had vanished in the national memory. So it is thanks to 2 decades of study that his major volume, Mussolini's Camps, Civilian Internment in Fascist Italy, 1940-1943, came out in Italy already 15 years ago and has just come out in English with Routledge, and will hopefully show us a whole other aspect of this story of the concentrationary, of the history of concentrationary universe that has so far been neglected. Also tonight we are fortunate to have with us Katarina Vigine, a native of Bratislava, Slovakia, who is an actress active in the avant-garde and traditional scene, New York scene in New York. She holds an MA in musical theater from the Jahneke Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts in Brno, and received a fellowship for outstanding contribution to theater from Brooklyn College, where she graduated with MFA in acting. She's also a prolific singer in European-style cabaret and chanson, and sings in Czech, Slovak, German, Russian, English, but also in Yiddish and Swahili. So I'd like to thank Katarina for being here with us and give voice to Maria. And now, you bear with me one more minute. We're here tonight to hear the voice of this woman, Maria Eisenstein, who at age 25 was arrested by the Italian police and brought to jail, and after a week or so, interned in a concentration camp. The formal reason of her arrest was that for reason of national security, upon Italy's entry into the war in June 1940, foreign citizens of enemy states should be separated from society. Maria, however, was not a citizen of an enemy state. If anything, she had come to Italy to study from Austria, an ally of Italy, part of the Reich. She was what the decree of arrest defined a foreign Jew, someone who was simply outside of a concept of nationality and was deemed dangerous because of her religion or race. About 4,000 men, women, and children fell under the same category. 15,000 had been forced to leave before March 1939 by the racial laws, and others were kind of slowly arriving from Germany, hoping to find their way to the Americas, Australia, or any country, and Palestine. These were thousands of people in transit, often stateless, with very little understanding of what was happening to them. They had belonged to this society, and they suddenly no longer did. And they didn't know how to live outside of the protection of the law, which now applied to them only in its persecutory capacity. That of Maria is a happy end story. After the armistice, she and the upheaval that followed, she escaped internment and she fled south, very much like Doris' family. She crossed the Allied front and became part of the early operation of counter-propaganda in liberated Italy. During her flight, she met the Italian-Cuban writer Alba de Cespedes, and that was probably that encounter that gave her the confidence to organize her diary during internment, her diary of detention, that she published in 1944, when Rome had just been liberated. Shortly after, she received a visa for the United States. She left, she disappeared from Italy, and she completely vanished from the memory of anyone she had met. Even though hers is the first known document of a concentration camp in Italy, it never appeared in every historiography or literature after the war. The few mentions of her indicate that she may have been deported, or she may have never existed. Maybe she was just the assumed name of someone who had written some sort of false memoir. It was not until 1994 that the book began again to circulate, thanks to the reprint curated by Carlo Spartaco Capogreco with a long essay documenting Maria's real life story. Capogreco, as I said, had began to unveil the history of Italian concentration camps in the early 1980s and had mapped the entire system of detention. His book revealed to Italians that the fascist regime had actually established concentration camps, not only in Yugoslavia, in East Africa, in Libya, but throughout the peninsula. That the infamous transit hub of Fossoli was, in fact, only the tip of the iceberg of a large concentrationary system that was very much part of the young nation. That concentration camps were a pervasive Western reality in colonial and national settings, and that there was hardly a nation that had not resorted to concentrating people whom, for a variety of reasons, were not deemed fit to live in the midst of citizens. Although there have been different types of concentration camps, I would like to invite you to think of one specific function of the concentration camp, which is to place a group of people, often defined in relation to the idea of nation, in parentheses, outside of the rule of law, abandoned to the unexpected, the unplanned, to an area lying outside of any social and political horizon. Exactly like Maria, the people who are bracketed between those parentheses have no past and no future. They could end up dead or alive. And either way, once the camps are no longer useful, the people, the time, the places that were bracketed were simply written out of history. Their existence is not regarded as something dangerous or against society, but rather as something inconsequential, irrelevant, almost a form of non-existence. Maria's story is emblematic of this suspended condition. She was lucky. Many other internees in the Italian camps were not. They were deported to Auschwitz in exactly the same percentage as Jews who were not interned. In her diary, she does not tell us about extreme abuse or extreme hate that can be neatly separated from our values today, here and now. Rather, she shows a gray area recognizable in modern-day societies, the intersection of the free and the segregated, when life still looks normal before it precipitates into the violence of elimination. When today we debate about what a concentration camp is, we should consider the concentration camps were tolerable, but while death camps were a handful, concentration camps were in the thousands, and were part of the structure of inclusion and exclusion of every modern state, and still are today. They're born of the idea that some people can be dispensed, and they don't belong. They can be assimilated. They can be normalized. These are ideas and practices which, as citizens, we can question and contest before they precipitate into a violence that cannot be stopped. Thank you.
Natasha was getting up just before the last one in the dorm. She put on her petticoat and took off her nightgown, lit a cigarette. I also began craving to smoke. Throw me the matches, Gorgon Medusa. Why Medusa? She asked casually as she combed her hair. Well, just an impression, I replied vaguely. Wouldn't this by chance be rude? Not by chance, I said with a tone that infuriated her. Not by chance. Only facts are born of chance, or of fate, if you prefer, not words. Words depend on us. At least they depend on us. And so, instead we depend on the Ministry of the Interior. That's all. Ilona. Fortunately, I had Ilona. This was our dilemma. Pistone, the chief inspector, was, yes, a pig, and his swine-like aspect sickened us. But Miss Marfisi, the camp director, was no better. Ilona preached in her poor, tough, and yet charming Italian. Ilona preached in her poor, tough, and yet charming Italian. Uomo cattivo sempre meglio de donna buona. E chi essere buona, Marfisi, Gesù Maria, allora io Santa Sanctissima. Ruth. Ruth is the most resigned among us. She cries in secret. We pity her because she is so young. She was just 19 when she came here and had already experienced the ugliness of life. First, the forced emigration from Germany, and then internment. But we envy her precisely because she is so young. And no matter how long the war lasts, she will still come out young. Among 75 men, she would have been safer. Perhaps someone would have taken and abandoned her. She would have suffered, but also experienced some joy. She would have lived. Here instead, everything stagnated in a pathological wait for the end. But what end? Inspection. They arrived in a brand new car. The questore, who looked like Santa Claus, the medical officer, Dr. C, doctor of the camp, and the podesta of L. And Miss Marfisi greets them all, wagging, sweating, and excited. They approached slowly, looking at us, and it seemed as if the sight of us, 75 women, scared them a bit. "Good morning," we said in unison. "Good morning," they replied gravely. Only Santa Claus dared a shy smile. Then he asked with tremulous voice, "Are you all right?" "Si, signor questore," we answered, Marfisi's sharp voice standing out among ours. "Is there anything wrong?" "No, signor questore." Free time. Going to town is the only diversion for us in the camp, and is therefore much coveted by the younger women. The maximum duration of these permitted leaves is 1.5 hours. We run all the way to the center and go back at marathon speed. Strolling on the main street or entering the shops is strictly prohibited. We, of course, do nothing but take the main street to see and to be seen. Men are provincial, funny, and clumsy, but it doesn't matter. They are men. Ugly, vulgar, but men. Writing. Upon re-entering the room, primping is finished up, whistle, new roll call, mail distribution, and communications from the authorities. Lunch, my private correspondence, after lunch digestive stroll, from 4 to 7 other people's correspondence, then supper, 8 p.m. roll call, and Marfisi's moving farewell for the night. She goes home, locks the door, and carries the key with her. The case of fire has not been contemplated or has met with little interest. In the camp, I'm in charge of writing. I write tender, nostalgic, threatening, diplomatic, commercial, legal, religious letters. I must write the letters myself based on often vague instructions. One, for example, asks me, write to him to send me 300 lire. Another, tell him what you like, but it has to be 4 pages, otherwise he complains. Ilona only says, haven't you answered my Roberto? Maria, did you do it? Yes. All right, go to Marfisi. All correspondence is overseen by Marfisi. Don't you want to read it? No, why? That why consoles me of all the grievances of the day. Ilona loves me. She trusts me. Internee number 6. Perhaps when I really trouble myself, I perceive the camp a little less. It's a paradox, but that's how it is. The more I torment, the more I feel in a fictitious world and not in a real one. I feel less like myself in that world. It is the other, number 6, who of course has her personality because she is 6 and not 59 or 23. But she is not me. And where am I? In hiding. From my hiding place, I look at this 6 who is stirring, writing, arguing, and I marvel at her. What is with this 6? It seems as if she is comfortable here. She laughs, sometimes she's crass, like a porter, like a crass porter. She courts Marfisi, bows before Pistone, strives to be liked by everyone. She talks about the tragedies of her family and sounds as if boasting about her vexations, as if they were a merit. The evening comes. It is dark and number 6 fades with the other shadows. I come out, brave, from my hiding place. Brave because it gets dark, and when it gets dark, I drop the mask. Now I have the courage to fear. How much I fear. My throat tightens, my limbs are paralyzed. I curl up in my cot, cover my head with the blanket, and let the fear rise, envelop me, and grow, and freeze in me. Let me be stupefied and dumb. It is the anguish of what will happen. Conscience and pity. With 20,000 liras, freedom can be obtained. We were told this today, and I believe it. Muti's nephew told us. He is a German Jew, but he's the dentist of Galeazzo Ciano, Mussolini's son-in-law. Everyone in Rome knows it. At the Ministry of the Interior, there is a certain Dr. L in charge of internment. He is very influential. Dr. L is moved by Christian piety towards Jewish internees. With 20,000 liras, this piety becomes extraordinarily active. In a week, you are out. Korah came out like that. But they also told us that this gentleman is not only compassionate, he is a man of conscience. At times, his conscience falls asleep, then awakens, about 3 months after the payment. And that is when one returns to the camp. Westerplatte. A small group of optimists used to gather after dinner on the stairway between the first and the second floors. The landing was baptized the Westerplatte. We sang the Marseillaise, and It's a Long Way to Tipperary. At one point, the leftists joined the group, Federica, Lily, Kaya, and Zoya, and we began to sing the International and Bandiera Rossa. prison. A new internee arrived, an old woman. They had to carry her from her car to her cot as she was paralyzed in her legs. A German Jew, widow, childless. What is the point of jailing such a disgraced creature? Did they fear she would run away? Or did they think she was Colonel Florence resurrected and disguised? Why prison? Why put me, you, the others in prison? You see, it happened like this. The Ministry of the Interior telegraphed to each police headquarters, arrest all foreigners of enemy nationality, beginning with the Jews. Mosca de Fuego. She was an old Polish woman who had spent the first 40 years under the Russians. We called her Mosca de Fuego. She was lively, ignorant, and came up with fantastic stories. I should talk for years, but you wouldn't understand. You can't because you didn't live there then, in that world. I was so beautiful, oh, so beautiful. I would have never believed that so much beauty could fade away. Today I have nothing but memories, a mink, some bijou, and gout. They loved me so madly. And where are they? Dead. Ghosts. The first man who left me, he left me, you see. I was 36 then. He made me laugh. I found it so absurd that anyone could abandon me. Me. But you wouldn't understand. Progress. I don't know. There are no more saints, no more fatalities, passions, honor. You think I'm stupid, don't you? Progress. Good times, bad times. But after 1917, there were no more good times. Love. It is almost certain that E has a friend in the city, but not even Gertie knows anything for sure. And it is a mystery how and when she can see him and make love. Elle and Mireille have someone, Angelica too, in spite of her pregnancy. Liselotte, so sensual, suffers terribly. She is from Vienna and Jewish, married to a Nazi. Following conscientiously Hitler's instructions, her husband abandoned her in 1938. Marfisi told me that the two A make love. With whom? I asked, surprised. Don't be naive. With one another, of course. I found the idea unlikely. The two girls are friends, great friends, said two. If anything, Eva would be quite likely a practicing lesbian, but I can't imagine with whom. I would be happy if erotic thoughts could distract me from my other thoughts, especially since I no longer receive Franco's mail. I love to see how all these wives love their husbands now that they are far from them. It seems that theirs are all perfect marriages. The most loyal wives are the Aryans who married Jews, something I often see, while I have not yet seen any Aryan husbands who have emigrated with their Jewish wives. It may be a phenomenon of these tormented times, marriages, strengthened or broken. There is no longer the house, the office, the maid, the visit, the game, the Café X, the Cinema Y, the friend, the doctor, the doorman, the enemy, the rival, the newspaper, the children's school grades. Nothing is left of that miniature of life. Marriage, which is at the same time in the world and at war against it. Here the raw humanity is exposed, sometimes repugnant, but also moving. women. In all women's camps, there is a female director. We do not know if they all rub their internees as ours does. How nice, this cheese, it must be delicious. Or, look at these cigarettes, my husband's favorite brand. And we pay our levy. Franco. I try to understand whether I really want to die. No, I don't want to die, not like this, but if I were to die, I wouldn't mind. Not much. Everyone would cry. I, beautiful, young, with white roses in my diaphanous hands. I just did my manicure. I heard that after death, nails and hair still grow. Matter beats spirit. Franco, however, should be present when I die. I must tell him many things, noble and strong things, which he must always remember, always. But what always can there be after I am dead? How can I leave my imprint on him like a brand forever? That means never forgetting, never being able to forget, never wanting to forget. Always. The arrest. I had always thought, from the movies and mystery books, that a respectable arrest should be accompanied by the somber words, "in the name of the law," and by an arrest warrant. On the morning of June 17, 1940, 7 days after Italy entered the war, and 6 days after receiving the news of my father's death in Poland, a little man in civilian clothes showed up at my house and gracefully obtained permission from my reluctant landlady to wake me up at an hour that was for me most unusual. The little man escorted me. We arrived at a low, gloomy building near the police headquarters. He knocked on a side door. Strange, I thought, that the head of police would be in such a place. A big man accompanied me silently through a long corridor with many doors closed to the right and left until we reached a small room where we found another big man also in short sleeves. "Who is she?" he asked. Since no one spoke, I said, "Would you like my personal data?" An expression of gratitude spread across their faces. "Yes," the first one whispered, "yes, of course, yes." Then the man number one, rattling a bunch of keys which sounded rather sinister, invited me to follow him to the corridor and opened one of the doors. He pushed me inside and closed the door behind me. The room was dark. Light came only from the window overlooking the dark corridor, and cost me effort to try to discern something besides a human figure, which I recognized because it moved, and I did not think they had locked me with animals. As soon as my eye became accustomed to the darkness, I saw that the human figure was an old woman with white hair. She stood out like a light stain on a dark background and had a repulsive face. She was sitting swaying over a very large wooden plank, a sort of raw bed for 6 or 7 people. In the narrow space between the plank and the other wall, there were 2 receptacles. I learned later that one served as toilet, the other to drink. Despite my dizziness and a strange lack of care about tomorrow, I was able to complete a thought about my arrest. The motive, Polish Jew, general measure. Camps. I was hoping that Mussolini would not hand over foreign Jews to Hitler. Thus, there would have been no fear about internment in Italy. It just didn't scare me too much. I was actually a little curious about it. It could not be worse than the prison. It would have been enough to have some money to be able to buy food and cigarettes and have someone to send us books. In a concentration camp, there would certainly be some kind of garden or a courtyard or at least some chance of getting some fresh air and stretching our legs. However, compared with the certain death that awaited me in Germany, the camp was a small problem, although certainly not very pleasant. Was I not, after all, in Italy, where anti-Semitism was a scarcely felt feeling, and where it was possible to find an arrangement for almost everything? What exactly was a concentration camp? Dora and I often discussed it, but without ever coming to a clear view. We completely lacked data and tried to sum up the Isle of Man and Dachau. That is, between what we had read or heard about the internment of foreign enemies in England and of Jews and anti-Nazis in Germany. Houses or barracks? Men and women together or separated? Common canteen or individual supply? Forced labor? Equal treatment for all or according to the respective police files? All these questions continued to puzzle us. At the table, we are all quite depressed. So far, despite the ration cards, it has always been possible to buy everything, and there has therefore been no lack of food. Now, on top of the fee for the canteen, 5 liras, which is automatically deducted from our government subsidy of 6.5 liras, we must still buy food if we do not want to go hungry. I spent 4 liras a day. I still have 300 liras I brought with me. Then I don't know, and I don't care. Others, however, especially the women with children, are desperate. If we do not pay the peasant women higher prices than the market, they do not sell us their goods. A vendor once told Lily, "To you who are our enemies of our homeland, I should not sell anything. You should all die of hunger." Then she added, "But if I sell you something, you have to pay more than the others." Today, Pistone prohibited us from buying food. In a small town like this, everything gets immediately reported. People might believe that you don't eat enough in the canteen. "In fact," said Ruth, blushing violently, "we don't eat enough in the canteen. And what we eat is bad." Sasha. Sasha has finally received money from home. It was time. She was in bad shape. She is a thin little woman, closer to 40 than 30. She has big eyes in a long, thin face, a beautiful smile and beautiful teeth, too regular, too white. They look fake and probably are. She came a month ago in beach pants, a balding fur coat proudly thrown over one shoulder like a dolman. She was pretty cheerful. "Thank goodness," she said. "Prison was disgusting." Sasha was a Nazi, the divorced wife of a Dutch nobleman. The party. The evening's motto was "Après la fête, le déluge," which anticipated an unpleasant day after, filled with Pistone's reproaches, Marfisi's looks, and the resentment of those who had been excluded. The thought made our desire of fun even more intense. We looked like girls at their first dance party and frantically concocted clothes, hairstyles, and makeup, ran up and down the stairs to borrow a curling iron, a scarf, cologne, or a necklace of false pearls. As soon as the roll call finished and the director and manager went to town, the party began. Each guest showed up with a plate, a fork, and a glass. We immediately threw ourselves on the little snack that we found excellent. Angela and Angelica were dressed up as angels in white nightgowns with all sorts of trimmings, perhaps a bit unorthodox, but after all, they were jailed angels. Gertie was dressed up as free person. That's what you wear outside. And where do you go with such attire? To the theater. But what is a theater? Friedel, disguised as a man in trousers, shirt, and a suit jacket, was a real hit, courted by all with languid glances. The others devised more or less fancy masquerades. Then came the performance. Angela played some scenes of Sicilian life. She was born and raised in Palermo. Angelica sang Fenesta Calucive and other Neapolitan songs. I did my best in the mime-dancing parody of the death of Cleopatra. Zoya masterfully played roommates and authorities. And finally, Sasha recited the three-penny opera that almost all of us knew well. We sang together the refrain. Und die einen sind im Dunkel und die anderen sind im Licht. Doch man sieht nur die im Lichte, die im Dunkel sieht man nicht. Finally, we danced and drank. Around midnight, Friedel suddenly broke out into tears with no apparent reason. A bit for the wine, a bit for desperation, and although we all laughed about it, the spell was broken. We took off our colored rags, fake flowers from our hair, face makeup. We hugged each other long and hard, without speaking. Then we retreated to our dormitories. Punishments. They can do 1,000 things where they want, without serious reasons. All it takes is to inflate a small incident, that's all. Aside from serious punishments like confinement islands and high security cells, there are light ones, more annoying than anything else. Prohibition to leave the house, suspension of permits to go to town, these kind of things. But there are also the private, unofficial punishments, which are the most hideous. The mail is not delivered to us for weeks, and we live for the mail. Ongoing reproaches because we smoke, honest women do not smoke, because we read, knit, or do some useful work, because we put makeup on. Do you want to seduce a policeman? Because we are late for the roll call or the canteen, because we talk to the service women, in short, because we are. Simply because we exist. Inside. It's terrible to be here. Prison gives me a sense of guilt. I don't have a very strong personality, I can see it now. I am often disdainful over petty details. But I still feel that I am alive. Humiliated, scared, weakened, but alive. With the hysterical exasperation that gradually takes us all, I sometimes see myself as a pioneer. Last survivor of an expedition, deprived of food, fuel, and hope. She records in a notebook everything that has happened and happens. She does it for humanity, for science, for who knows what. She does it while I'm waiting almost certain death. It is 75 of us here, many of us between life and death, in a pitifully vegetative state no human judgment should sanction. We have committed no other crimes than the small ones that every day every human being commits under the sky. Ilona. Autumn 1938. Ilona had just settled in Prague. The atmosphere was electric. The city was teeming with immigrants from Germany and Austria, more or less Jewish. Cafes, hotels, public gatherings full of crowds. The Czechs, the Sudeten Germans, the Slovaks, the Hungarians, the national and foreign Jews circulated in haste. Most of them had money. Nice liquid money, the result of years of sweats, anxieties, renunciations, speculations, studies, scams that had already at least once been transformed into houses, shops, cinemas, theaters, factories, cars, jewels, and furs, and which were now transformed back into fine cash again that was spent very easily and with a certain bitter joy. They were still alive, and that's what counted. There was no talk of the future. As Hitler will, the Jews said in the cafes, and their gray smiles were full of terror and resentment. Ilona floated carefree on this stage, appreciated for her elegance, her unyielding good humor, and her intelligent understanding of other people's concerns and business. Suddenly, Hitler entered Czechoslovakia. Enthusiastic, the Sudeten Germans sang the song of Horst Wessel with their thin Bohemian accent. The Slovaks rejoiced more for malice against the Czechs than for their own thirst for autonomy. The Czechs gritted their teeth at the Škoda factory and opposed no resistance. The Poles, tomorrow's slaughter pigs, triumphantly annexed Teshin's leg of today's slaughtered pig. The Jews wept and invoked the God of Israel. England kept its usual countenance but was slightly disturbed. France was moved. Switzerland indignant. Ilona understood that the time had come to do business. It was necessary to take advantage of the fact that some people were leaving and others had not yet settled. Tears. From a rational point of view, I should not cry because a pompous policeman torments me, while the lack of news from my mother is the almost certain sign of a horrible truth. I should not cry because a despicable little woman forces me to rush to her whistle like a loyal dog, while my grandparents, the dearest thing I have left in the world, deported to the Litzmannstadt ghetto, are exposed to unmentionable tortures. Shouldn't the dilemma, pray because they die or because they are able to endure, take away any faculty to shed tears because I'm a little cold? I thought that I didn't care about any of this and so many other things, but I do care. However, I would have overcome everything, Franco, except for your abandonment. I could have overcome the abandonment of the woman, but not the abandonment of the human being. The abandonment of number 6.
Okay, thank you very much to Caterina again, and it's always complicated to hear a text that one does not know for the first time. And I really hope that this reading gives everybody a flavor of the richness of this text, which very few people know in Italy, nobody knows here yet. We are working on translating it. Again, because of when it was written, immediately as her internment was happening, this is really a unique testimony of what was going on in these internment camps in Italy, and we owe it to Carlo Spartaco Capogreco to have been published and brought to people's attention. His adventure in finding the identity of this woman is the subject of a very interesting essay at the beginning of the book, and he will tell you a little bit about it. But mostly, we wanted to conclude this evening with some questions from you. We'll try to answer specifically about this text and about what you just heard, but more in general about internment in Italy as well. So, okay, so
questo testo è bello, quindi è una brava scrittrice, quindi questa è già una cosa. Poi come storico posso dire che ha un'altra bellezza, è ancora un testo importante perché è una testimonianza.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to say that this is a beautiful text. She was really a writer. In fact, Maria Eisenstein had studied literature in Florence and hoped to dedicate her life to literature. Secondly, I would like to say that as a historian, this is a very important text because it represents a testimony.
Per quanto mi riguarda, questo libro è anche una terza ragione di importanza, perché la sua storia, cioè la storia, ci sono due storie qui. Qui c'è la storia di Maria e c'è la storia del libro. E sono entrambe importanti.
There's a third reason of interest for me in this thing. There are really two stories. There's the story of Maria Eisenstein, the individual, and there is the history of this particular book.
La storia di Maria è nascosta dietro il romanzo. Lei non dice mai il suo nome, non dice neppure il nome del campo, lo si capisce facilmente, ma alla fine lascia intendere di essere, è d'accordo con l'editore, dicono che questa autrice, lasciano intendere che questa autrice sia finita nella Shoah.
Okay, so the history of Maria is a hidden history. It's hidden in this book, which is somewhere between a diary and a novel. The device that they used, she and the original publisher, was never to mention where she was from, which camp they were talking about, and nor what happened to her. It was, again, decided between her and the publisher to let the reader assume that she was swallowed in the Shoah.
E questa è la storia di Maria. La storia del libro è ancora più inquietante, perché il libro è stato pubblicato ed è stato dimenticato. Quindi la storia di questo libro racchiude un po' quella che è stata la storia dell'Italia del dopoguerra, del rapporto controverso, un po' ancora, come dire, non del tutto chiarito, che ha avuto l'Italia con queste cose, con i suoi campi, con il passato fascista.
So beyond the history, the story of Maria is the story of this book. The story of this book is a very disquieting one, because much like many things that happened in Italy immediately after the war, it was immediately published, so it was a public document, and then as rapidly as it was published, it disappeared. And Capogreco is telling us that this is symptomatic of how post-war Italy was dealing with this particular past.
In quegli stessi anni in cui nasce, in cui viene pubblicato questo libro è del 44, cioè Roma viene liberata nel 1944 in giugno, questo libro viene pubblicato subito dopo l'estate.
So it's important to get a sense of how much this was really an extraordinarily early document. Rome was liberated in the summer of 1944, and this is exactly when the book came out. So this book first was published by a small publisher in 1944.
In quello stesso periodo, in quegli stessi anni, in Italia si costruiva, possiamo usare questo termine un po' crudo, si costruiva una narrazione un po' eccessivamente edulcorata, un po' eccessivamente autoassolutoria del ruolo dell'Italia, del fascismo, diciamo che non era esattamente sempre succube dell'alleato nazista.
The years and the political, cultural climate in which the book came out was the immediate post-war years, where Italy was creating its own narrative and attempting to sugarcoat the past, a past which in which Italy had been Germany's main ally, and suddenly the brutality of that reality was being covered.
Come voi avete sentito, Maria non accusa l'Italia di crimini di guerra, ma anche queste osservazioni sue, abbastanza tranquille, normali, oggettive. Dico oggettive perché io poi le ho anche verificate le cose che dice, ho verificato anche le persone e questo non è un romanzo, sostanzialmente è un diario. Ma tutto ciò non faceva piacere agli italiani.
As you heard, Maria never accused Italy of war crimes, does not recriminate violence against her in any specific way of writing the history of Italy. Rather, she's really reporting her experience in the camp. As a historian, he's verified the names of the people mentioned, the circumstances, the durations, the location of the camp. None of it is fiction. These are real people, real incidents, and really the treatment that internees received in those camps.
Adesso vorrei dire solo due cose soltanto del mio rapporto con questo libro, cioè e con questa persona, perché è stato detto in sala in modo troppo elogiativo che io lo avrei riscoperto, quasi che io avessi fatto una ricerca archeologica di questo. Allora io voglio dire com'è stato il mio rapporto con questo libro e poi passerei magari a rispondere a qualche domanda.
Perfect. So I would like to add a couple of things regarding my particular relationship with this text. It's been said that I resurrected or I found it as if it was some kind of an archaeological dig. In reality, I would like you to understand my emotional attachment, my relationship to this text. Then we'll open it up to questions from the public.
Mi sono accorto che dagli anni 60 circa, nelle bibliografie che circolavano tra gli storici sull'internamento, dico internamento in generale, perché negli anni 60 non è che c'erano bibliografie sull'internamento fascista, c'era quasi nulla. Mi sono accorto che c'era questo, non sempre, ma si poteva leggere questo M. Eisenstein, l'internata numero 6.
In the 1950s, 60s, there was very little bibliography, anything about really life in the camps and the history of the internees. And as I was doing research, I kept on stumbling across reference to a book that was indicated as M. Eisenstein, the author, Internee number 6.
Ho guardato chi faceva questa citazione. E quando si trattava di persone raggiungibili, di persone vive o di amici storici, ho chiesto, ma non tutti la citavano, ma a quelli che ho trovato, che conoscevo, con cui potevo parlare, ho chiesto di che si tratta. E ho visto che nessuno sapeva niente, cioè si citava così.
So curiously, in my research, I tried to identify the people who had cited this book, who were referring to this book. And among them, historians who I knew, friends, or anybody who was alive. I then identify them and ask them, what is this book? Where can I find it? And it was apparent immediately that nobody had read it. That it existed, it was cited a lot, but nobody had read it.
In particolare ho constatato una cosa, che non solo non era conosciuto l'argomento da parte di chi eventualmente lo citava, ma nessuno sapeva dire esattamente di che internamento si tratta e quindi inevitabilmente tutti pensavano che fosse un internamento tedesco.
So not only that nobody could tell me anything about this book, but when I tried to press them of what kind of internee, she was interned where, nobody knew exactly, but the assumption was that it must have been from a Nazi camp.
Allora ho fatto un altro percorso. All'incontrario ho cercato di risalire la china, all'incontrario, per cercare il primo che avesse fatto la citazione, e l'ho trovato.
So I tried to go the opposite route. I tried to identify who was the first person to mention the existence of the book, and I found him.
E posso dire che ho capito che ci sono gli elementi per poter affermare che il primo che ha fatto questa citazione sapeva di che parlava.
I ascertained that the first person to talk about this book must have read it, or at least he knew what he was talking about. He knew what he was talking about.
E guarda caso non era esattamente uno storico, ma era uno che in qualche modo faceva autobiografia, raccontava la storia di se stesso. Era un ebreo straniero che era stato anch'egli internato in Italia.
And I think not by coincidence, I realized that the only person who had known anything about it was not a historian, but rather so-called foreign Jew who had been interned himself in Italy.
Era questa citazione in uno dei 3 quaderni che aveva iniziato a pubblicare il CEDEC, no? Che prospettavano, erano dei quaderni che appena nato il Centro di Documentazione Ebraica Contemporanea aveva iniziato questa pubblicazione con la Federazione Giovanile Ebraica di questi 3 quaderni. E il saggio che citava per la prima volta questo libro criticava, no, stigmatizzava la situazione in cui dell'internamento degli ebrei stranieri non si sapeva nulla, tantomeno dei campi in Italia.
So the newly formed Centro di Documentazione Ebraica Contemporanea, Center for Jewish Contemporary Research in Milan, published 3 publication consisting in 3 essays. One of them was by again, not a historian, but somebody writing autobiographically about his experiences, and he was directly addressing the condition, the situation of internment camps in Italy, fascist internment camps in Italy. And this is the context in which the book was cited.
Sì, ecco, io lì poi contemporaneamente cercavo il libro era un libro pubblicato in Italia ufficialmente, non era un libro clandestino, ufficialmente si sarebbe dovuto trovare nelle biblioteche nazionali almeno, però sapete, parliamo di anni ancora di guerra, Roma era libera ma l'Italia era ancora in guerra, quindi si può capire anche la difficoltà. La faccio breve, nella Biblioteca Nazionale non c'era a Roma, non c'era a Firenze, poi chissà per quali misteri a Firenze non c'è il libro nella Biblioteca Nazionale, ma c'è nella Marucelliana. Io la copia che ho avuto appena l'ho trovata, ho avvisato a tutti gli amici storici e ho fatto diverse fotocopie mandandola anche per esempio in Germania a Klaus Vogt e ad altri amici. Avevamo trovato finalmente il testo.
So a bit like in a mystery story, he started searching in all the obvious places for this book. He had the author, he had the title, so he went to the national libraries and in Rome, in Florence, and other places, and nobody had it. And then, again, quite by coincidence, a secondary, not the main national library, but another library in Florence called the Biblioteca Mussoliniana had a copy, and so he obtained the copy, read it, and made Xeroxes and sent it to historians in Italy and in Germany, for instance, to Klaus Voigt.
E vado a chiudere. Naturalmente avere il libro, abbiamo il libro, ma il libro non diceva nulla dell'autrice, non diceva nulla della sua storia, se era viva, se era morta, che cosa era successo. Ma io intanto avevo trovato il libro e seguivo anche la traccia dell'autrice, finché questo libro ha 50 anni esatti, dal 44, nel 1994, sono riuscito con le mie misere forze a far fare la seconda edizione, grazie anche ad un incontro molto bello, cioè magari lo dico adesso oppure mi...
So, as if in a double track here, he was following the history of a book, but he was also interested in the person. I mean, you have to understand, as a historian, you're studying these camps, the location of these camps, but the people are not there, they're just names. And here there was a possibility for the first time, and I think that this is what makes it so unique, not to talk about internment camps in general, but find a person. So he was looking for the text, he found the text, and now he was looking for the person. And nothing was known about her, whether she was alive or dead, and he started researching in a very comprehensive, extensive way, really. And 50 years after the book was published, that is in 1994, he was able to have an Italian publisher reissue the book with an essay explaining his itinerary in discovering the book, what the book means, putting it into context, and what he found out about the author.
Il libro che voi vedete sul tavolo di là è una nuova edizione ancora, che esce nel 2014, quindi a 70 anni, sempre questo 4 che ritorna, perché mi sono accorto che nel 94 avevamo ripubblicato il libro, io intanto avevo trovato molte notizie, ma avevo capito ormai negli anni 2000 che era importante fare un'edizione critica, cioè dire cosa è vero, cosa è romanzo, cosa è storia di questo libro, indicare le persone, indicare il percorso. Quindi l'edizione che voi vedete adesso, che abbiamo adesso, è un'edizione critica che può essere quindi consente veramente di utilizzare anche come io lo utilizzo per esempio con i miei studenti, anche chi lo legge semplicemente come romanzo, credo che possa godere di più perché vengono fuori tante di quelle cose importanti. Tra queste, quella più forse grandiosa è l'incontro con Alba de Céspedes.
Okay, so the final step of this long story is that in 2014 he had a new edition, which is finally a critical edition, which is what you see on the table outside. And in this edition, he was able to put together all the research that he had done between the different editions on the person and on the camps, matching historical research with biographical research on Maria Eisenstein.
Naturalmente sarebbe molto lungo. Adesso io ho fatto questa ricerca, parliamo di campi di un periodo ben determinato, quando l'Italia era ancora un paese formalmente sovrano, diciamo, fino al 1943. Ecco perché prima dell'armistizio noi abbiamo un periodo in cui si sviluppano questi campi in un certo modo, dopo dell'8 settembre dell'armistizio del 1943, l'Italia è un paese collaborazionista completamente appiattito sulla Germania, anche con la Shoah che entra nella nostra penisola.
Okay, so basically okay, we're talking about camps. We have to distinguish two very different moments of Italian internment. The book that he put together, the initial research regards the years from 1940 to 1943. That is when Italy was a sovereign state. It was taking independent decisions of what to do with the Jewish questions, with dissidents and all of that. And in that period, it's a very complex story. He's written this book about it, but the Italians decided to build or to employ structures throughout the peninsula, usually abandoned villas, barracks, different places in different locations where they gathered and segregated groups of people, such as what you heard in the story.
So after the war, were there also DP camps in Italy as well as there were in Germany?
I campi per displaced people. Yeah. So
Sì,
again,
sì.
so make it very short. There were three different moments. First moment is when Italy was taking the, was totally independent and making decisions on this matter. 1940, 1943. 1943, because of the alliance and then the invasion of the Germans in Italy, then it's a different internment story completely. After the war, the Allies asked, basically forced Italy to open up displaced people's camp, and some of them lasted well into the post-war period, such as in Rome. Again, these DP camps were in the south of Italy, center of Italy, north of Italy, everywhere.
Allora, l'editore si chiamava Donatello De Luigi.
Donatello De Luigi was the name of a publisher, the original publisher.
In quel periodo a Roma appena liberata, nacquero molte case editrici. La gran parte di queste case editrici chiuse dopo pochissimo tempo.
This was it was one of the many short-lived publishing ventures that flourished immediately after Rome was liberated.
Non lo so fino a che punto la dicitura che c'è alla fine, cioè che lascia intendere che l'autrice sia finita nella Shoah, non sono certo che possa essere stata una volontà precisa dell'autrice. Secondo me può essere un tentativo editoriale di vendere di più, di creare suspense per questo. Potrebbe essere semplicemente questo.
I'm not sure that the implication that the author had been swallowed in the Shoah was a decision of the author or an editorial decision of the publisher, something to sell more.
E il fatto che lei firmi con il cognome del marito, lei non commette un falso, non si nasconde, non c'è un nickname effettivamente. Lei si chiama Maria Ludwika e c'è scritto semplicemente Maria, quindi lei è Maria e il Eisenstein è il suo marito allora. Quindi si usa qui il nome del marito, non è esattamente, in un certo senso sì, non ha voluto esplicitarsi al massimo. D'altra parte lei non aveva intenzione di fare un libro di testimonianza storica precisa, documentata con le note bibliografiche che adesso ci sono nel testo, ma le ho messe io, come spiego nella prefazione.
So this was basically a diary. She did not have ambition to write a history of internment, and thus the decision to use her husband's name is not a way of hiding or to using a pseudonym. It was really her name. Her real name was Maria Ludovica. She used Maria, and Eisenstein was the name of husband.
Questo rapporto è una cosa molto importante, che teniamo conto che Mercurio, se prendiamo il primo numero di Mercurio e anche da un punto di vista fisico, no, della tatticità del libro, sono tutte e due della stessa misura, con la stessa carta di guerra, insomma, no? Carta grezza che circolava allora, e le due donne si conoscono in una grande bosco dell'Abruzzo, che era un po' in quel momento una cloaca di ex prigionieri di guerra, cittadini sfollati, DP di vario tipo. È una cosa molto interessante.
Okay, so for those who might not be familiar, she asked, the question is of a relationship between
Alba de Cespedes.
yes, Alba de Cespedes, which was a well-known Italian author, and this particular book, and literary magazine Mercurio, which they both collaborated to. So this is what Alba created, yes, and then Maria Eisenstein collaborated. And so he says that this is a complicated story, and nobody knows exactly where the relationship started, except that they met in these woods in Abruzzo after the war when they escaped. And this was a place where many refugees had taken refuge, and the people from DP camps gathered and they started a number of initiatives. So certainly they knew each other, they had collaborated, and for instance, the physical aspect of Mercurio, the magazine, the physical aspect of Maria Eisenstein's book were identical, same wartime paper, same format. So everything points to a close relationship, but we don't exactly know how.
Allora dico la cosa più paradossale, partendo proprio da questo luogo, da questo campo dove era Maria. Questo era, nel caso specifico, era una villa disabitata in quel momento, che è stata affittata. E questa villa, io lo racconto nel libro, ho cercato di sensibilizzare il comune perché venisse comprata, perché era in condizioni pietose quando io l'ho vista per la prima volta negli anni '80, però è stata acquistata da privati che si sono autorecintati, sembrano adesso degli internati, che non permettono neppure la visita. Quasi è difficile anche fare una foto da lontano.
Scusami. Okay, so it's a complex question to answer. Paradoxically, if we start from the camp that's described in this particular book, in this case it was a villa. The fascist regime had rented the villa and used the abandoned villa as an internment camp. After the war, the place had been again abandoned. It was in ruins. He identified it in the 1980s, at which time he put some pressure on local authorities, the comune of Lanciano.
Quasi negli stessi mesi.
Yes.
È una storia incredibile, perché io mi sono trovato quasi negli stessi mesi ad identificare il libro, il luogo e la persona.
Yes. Quite coincidentally, he identified the villa, the person, and the text roughly at the same time. In any case, to conclude the answer to your question, yes, there are many of these places in Italy that have been identified. Some are now considered luoghi della memoria. They're preserved. Mostly, there's absolutely nothing there to see but the ruins of a building. And the building vary in size and nature very much one from the other.
Possiamo dire che c'è la mappatura nella seconda parte del libro.
Yes, the second part of his book, which has just been translated in English, really has a complete map of where these places were, what they are, what's there today. Okay, no, so I mean, no, there's no forced labor and there were no killings. When we're talking again, as I said before, about this initial period, 1940, 1943, there were camps in Italy where people were killed after 1943, for instance, in Trieste. But this is not what we're talking about. These are camps where people were detained as if in a prison. Gentleman in the back, and I think that we have time for one more, and we got to close. Okay.
Arguably, I'm the only caveman having been born at the time of 43, while this action was taking place in Greece, in a mountain cave. And I remember subsequent to the war learning, a la Corelli's mandolin, that occupation was very benign under Italian rule. And presumably, even though the camps in Italy were no summer camps, they were not, as you sort of implied, they were not extermination camps. They were detention camps. And I wonder, what is the percentage of the Jews who survived there? 87% of the Greek Jews vanished. Okay. 95% of the Danish Jews survived because they were considered part of Denmark. What was the condition of Jews?
This is a little,
if you know, I don't know.
We're attempting to keep on this particular subject, but to answer your question,
yeah.
So the question of the treatment under Italian rule in occupied lands, such as Greeks, is really a different issue altogether of what they were doing to Jews and foreign Jews in Italy. So, though I...
Sorry, because these are two different pieces of history, and just what I would like to say, I'm not sure what you mean as benign. I mean, Italians in Greece have committed crimes that are still being tried. They have massacred an entire village of only women, elderly, and children in Dominican. That is one of the worst war crimes in that area. So it's everything is very relative, and we have to be very careful with percentages. In Italy, you have deportations of 100% of the Jews under Italian rule in Rhodes and in Fiume, whereas 85% of the Jews were deported with the collaboration of the police. And then you have areas where you have 20% or you have very low percentages. But more or less, France, Germany, and Italy have similar percentages of deportation, and it's not because they were benevolent, but because they were the center of the action.
Allora, l'internamento non riguarda solo gli ebrei, naturalmente. L'internamento è una misura di guerra che riguarda determinate categorie.
Okay, so first of all, internment in Italy did not concern only Jews. It was a wartime measure that addressed certain category of people that were regarded as dangerous. The official language, the reason of interning the Jews, as was mentioned at the beginning of the reading, is that they were Jews of enemy nationalities. Of course, this was not strictly the case because they interned German and Austrian Jews who were not enemy aliens at all. However, the measure was considered bureaucratically a wartime measure against dangers to the regime. And it was anti-fascist and the Jews.
I was referring specifically to the racial laws.
Yes, yes.
Sì, per quanto...
Yes, yes.
Your neighbor next door in your apartment building, what did he do when you were told you couldn't go to school?
Well, you cannot generalize, and there was cases of enormous solidarity. What? Well, what I'm telling you, it's the answer is a nuanced answer because there are cases of neighbors who refused, who hid their Jewish neighbors, and their. No, there was no official public protest. Again, but it's a complicated question. It's a complicated answer, and I really don't want to dismiss the question as a simple one. In my case, my family was arrested by Italians who knew them, who told for money to the fascists and had them arrested. At the same time, once they were arrested, they were liberated by Italians who had known them personally and who felt loyal to them as human beings. And this is not a particular case of my family, but it's representative of the vast range of reactions. Yes. John. I would take a last question, and I thank you for your patience, and I really urge you to try to read Professor Capogreco's book on the camps, because it's a really major work that explains in detail some of the issues that we are rapidly summing up. Yes, Italy had been under a fascist dictatorship for 20 years. It was very difficult to take a public position against the regime, and as a group, nobody did that. Individual acts of kindness and understanding were quite frequent, and again, it really depends geographically where, and it depends it's very much a function of the fact that the Jewish population in Italy was mostly in cities from north, from Rome up north. So they weren't everywhere. You know, they put these laws, the racial laws in 1938. Much of Italy had not experienced Italian Jews for centuries. There were no Jews in southern Italy. So it's a complicated question because it varied so much on where and how and when. Thank you very much.